and welcome to all of you who came. I'm really excited that Daniel's going to be doing this talk.
I can fix that.
No, we will be prodding you. My name is Diana Smith, and I'm going to be your moderator. I'm part of the MetchosinArtPod, and this is going to be recorded for our YouTube channel. We've got a couple of artist talks on our website, but this is more of our the first one of many that we hope to do. So, Metchosin, I want to tell you, not you, I think you know where Metchosin is, but it's a small community, a rural community of 5,000 people, just over, near Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island, which is part of BC, which is part of Canada, planet Earth. And we always start our events by doing a land acknowledgement, so talking about location. So the gallery is on borrowed, stolen, contested land, whatever word you use, of the Chiano and Suk First Nations. And the themes that Daniel may touch on in your talk is ruin and reclamation, or those kind of themes. And I thought that was, they're just other names for truth and reconciliation in a different kind of compartment. And those both describe a fraught history of colonialization of indigenous cultures by European settlers and attempts to create a more just and better future. We think Daniel's talk will be very much in tune with these duals and contested realities, like acknowledgement of the past and possible futures. After a brief introduction, Daniel will talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll answer questions. And Jeanette Winterson, she's a British writer, she said that if you want to get a lot out of art, if you want art to work for you, you have to work for art. And I think the same thing is true for artist talks. So I would like you to sit on the edge of your chairs and pay really good attention to what Daniel's going to be saying, because I've been immersed in what's online about him, and you're reading and listening to him, and it's really, you will get rewarded with your attention. And at the end, when there's questions, you'll get even more rewarded by your insightful questions that you will be asking him at the end. So, just a real brief introduction. Daniel was born in Toronto. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
You will. Yeah. I was born in Grimsby, which is a little town across the lake from Toronto.
Oh, okay.
A fruit-growing area.
Well, you better correct some of that stuff online.
People write stuff.
He wasn't born here, but he now lives in Greater Victoria and works here. Before making a career as an artist and professor, he was a helicopter pilot and engineer. And as one person introducing him said, he swapped one field, aeronautics, for another, art, of equal, if dissimilar, danger, which I thought was neat. But what comes to my mind about being a helicopter pilot is you get an overview of things that most of us don't get. And I think that can't help but influence how you think about life, the world, whatever, from that big, you see both the majesty and the destruction, which, a lot of it is hidden.
And it's a lot easier to talk about flying than it is to talk about art.
Well, you got 20 minutes.
Right, carry on.
I believe you graduated with an MFA from UCLA, with my Master of Fine Arts from the University of California in Los Angeles in 1991. Your list of exhibition is long and extensive, and your work has been shown in BC, in Seattle, and internationally. You've taught at University of Victoria since 2000, I think. and before that SFU, Simon Fraser University and Emily Carr University, which are both in BC. So what is your work? This is what he will tell you, but I will say an introduction. I mean, he's going to tell you what his work is, that's the whole point. But what I will tell you is that he is a maker of objects, materially and conceptually rooted. So you got stuff and you got ideas. So, talking about both of them. This translates via sculpture, photography, optics, robotic systems, installations and projection works, set design, and large-scale public commissions. In other words, multimedia that is fully engaged with modern technology to connect the past with possible futures. If this all sounds daunting, let me describe just two works very briefly that I found particularly moving in more ways than one because they move. One was Song for My Father, which I believe was a metal tool chest that he had made himself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize when you think of a tool chest, it's also a chest, and it was all about breathing, and I think his difficulty in breathing. And you found an accordion, I believe, that didn't really make sound. It made that kind of sound.
Actually, I modified it to do that.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Oh, neat. Well, it's just so rich in layers and meaning. So, and I think at one point for 5 hours you did the breathing, the recording.
I did that as a performance, and that was the original Song for My Father, where I was just, in a sense, breathing for him. Yeah. My relationship with my father was troubled. Yeah. And he died, 31 years ago. So I made this piece after his death, and while I was trying to sort out things.
So labored relationships, labored breathing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love that piece. And there was another. So I got this from the website, which you can get all this from the website, which I do recommend. You've done public commissions, and so one of them was outside the Richmond Fire Hall. And I bring this one up particularly because Metchosin has a big issue about its fire hall. So we will not probably be getting a big public art piece outside our new fire hall. That would be too much. But I believe it was a tetrahedron, like a three-sided triangle with a base, so there's four. And it was about the four elements of fire, which is fuel, heat, ignition source, and chemical reaction. And it also had services of the fire hall. And when there's a little video that it spins around, so it's very interactive. In the video you see just people on it. It was just beautiful. So I love public art. So I was just very excited about that. Yeah.
Playful.
Wouldn't that look lovely, something like that in Metchosin? Yeah. Something, just to enliven us.
Diana, you're preaching to a choir.
So you can go...
Just as a note on that, you can see the flickering lights. That's a programmed LED lighting system. A friend of mine in Toronto saw this video and said, perfect. You've put a monument outside a fire hall that includes a fire that will never go out.
Yeah. There's so many layers in, I think, good art, really. So, you can go to Daniel's website to see more, but much better, we get to hear you in first-hand experience. And people on the video to slightly less than first-hand. This talk is called From the Wreckage, Other Futures. And it's to go along with the show that we have at MetchosinArtPod called Fleeting, Exalting the Ephemeral. And Edward Peck and Phyllis Schwartz are the curators of the show and a big part of getting it all together. So I'd like to welcome Daniel.
Thank you. That was a really lovely introduction.
Yeah.
And you boosted me way beyond what you should have.
I'm good.
I'm going to do a fairly casual talk. and obviously fairly short. My practice is wide-ranging. One of the questions that I address is that of what actually art might be today. I think the job of art is unclear and to some extent under-recognized. And now I'm going to talk about work, and I want to call to mind the words of the mid-20th century American artist David Smith, who said, "Everything I've got to say, I've said in the work." And he didn't like to talk about his work. I don't mind. I do these lectures not infrequently for a particular class at UVic, taught by the same person over and over. So each year that I do it, I try to give an entirely different talk. Today's talk will be yet another variation on that. It'll draw from other things, but it will be something of an excerpt rather than a full or proper overview. Dana, you suggested that people might be interested in the making of this kind of imagery.
Well, I was.
That'll do. I've long been interested in the way that how something is shown is as effective as what is shown, or as significant as what is shown. And I was led to actually by a grad student, a process called photogrammetry, in which a large number or smallish number of photographs are processed by computer software to generate a three-dimensional model of that which is photographed. Okay, and that's how this was generated. So just to briefly look at these pictures, this was a sequence of photographs, not all of them, but most of the photographs that I took of this thing, this little emptied out work table, that I used I fed that into the photogrammetry software, and that gave me a digital, three-dimensional digital model. And so I was able to remove the building, excerpt things, and reduce the number of photographs until I got an image such that the character of the image is analogous to the character of the object itself. A little bit coming apart, a little bit dissolved, decrepit, right? And interestingly, also, it becomes, in many instances, quite painterly. It was described by a colleague of mine as a way of building a photograph rather than taking a photograph. So I thought I'd start out with that, just kind of to honor Diana's interest. I'll come back to it. It's a good starting point. That work is right here. What I had up on the screen in the beginning, the sculpture, was the sculpture that I suspect many of you saw that was right here. I had to remove it. But I wanted to bring that up as a kind of counterpart to this image. The two work importantly together. I'll refer back to that further down the road here. And this is the same image, it's just on a grayed background. Turning then more directly to the title of the talk, one starting point might be thought of as being Expo 86 in Vancouver. I didn't go to Expo 86, although I worked on parts of it, and I made the facade for the Hungarian pavilion, a 52-foot by 20-foot relief carving of a scene from Budapest. After Expo 86 closed, I visited the site. I think there was some fence hopping involved, but I visited the site, and the ruins were amazing. You know, the things that fascinated me most were the way that grasses and plants were already breaking up through the concrete, through the pavement. And so there was this dual sense of ruin, wreckage, decrepitude, and growth, perseverance, renewal. And they were simultaneous, right? And so I've long been interested in that. I also went by the Pavilion of Promise, which has been a kind of landmark pavilion for me. It was a religious, Christian, fundamentalist Christian and religious pavilion, and I have no interest in that particular ideology. But I thought seeing the Pavilion of Promise in this kind of shattered, semi-shattered condition was a really nice marker. I'm interested in these sites of abandonment, the sites, places where perhaps only momentarily the usual constraints or controlling forces have been put on pause. Often broken down, but usually just put on pause. And we see those when we walk by an empty building and go, oh, I could do a show there. Oh, that could be a gallery. Oh, that could be my studio. And abandoned buildings, that all of that stuff. We see, we long to be the blades of grass pushing through the pavement. And that kind of duality, I think, is present in this rather horrible Pavilion of Promise. I took a lot of photographs on the Expo 86 site, and then I went and I made a series of paintings from them. And this is 3 of the paintings. They were first part of my first professional art exhibition in 1987 at the Ore Gallery. And it was a combination of 36 paintings and 6 cast bronze pieces. The bronze pieces were each about 1.25 inches tall. They were icons of 1950s prosperity, and they were on 4-inch square plinths of the site. And the paintings were from the photographs I had taken of the wreckage of Expo 86. I'll just advance through this so you can see it a little better. Each painting was part of that wreckage. Each painting, and this was my personal predilection, I guess. Each painting was exactly the size of a 35 millimeter slide. So there was a 1-to-1 correspondence there. But they're traditional landscapes in a way. Foreground, middle ground, background, nice horizon line, stuff happening. Okay. And then another wreckage piece. At this time, what was this? 2003, I think, was the first iteration of this. And it's called Relapse. So there are a sequence of these interwired little boxes. They range in size, they're about this big, There's a detail. And I will play, will I? Yes, I will. I'll play a little video clip of this. Relapse, just like that. Oh, I'm going to, let's see. I'm afraid, I have to just, I don't think I can advance it. This is the actual soundtrack. The image of Vancouver constantly falling down and being replaced by itself. And that piece I first showed at the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, and then in Mexico City, and then in Belgrade in Serbia. So it's been around. It's a great piece because it would take up, it would fill this gallery as a central thing, lots of space around it. But it also goes into a big suitcase. So it's kind of ideal that way. But yeah, so there's this idea already here in 2003 of collapse, destruction, and its constant reconstruction. But there was something in that held on to me, and it's this moment in which things seem frozen. This little pause where you might fall sideways into time. And so a piece that I did around the same time is, oh no, does it play? Yeah, this plays. This is without sound. And I took a little segment of the film footage, which I paid licensing for, of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge just before it collapsed. 1942, this is held up in, that was a short video, hang on. In 1942, this bridge over the Tacoma Narrows was completed. The wind resonance wasn't factored into it. It was called Galloping Gertie because it undertook this rolling motion. And in 1942, a few months after it opened, it collapsed. I think the dog died. The dog was in the car.
Big
And
boo-boo. Big boo-boo.
Yeah. And now engineering schools use the steel from this bridge for their ring or so, for the engineering. Anyway, I took this excerpt of this, and it just plays as this loop rolling endlessly. It does not stop. And it's kind of like waiting for Donald Trump to die. Waiting for any of those things that you wait for that are interminable and horrible. Right? And it was just on this little work table structure. Oh, I guess I didn't include that slide. That was careless.
Is there actual footage of it collapsing completely?
There is footage of it collapsing completely. I wasn't interested in that moment of completion, only in the moment before, you know? Think.
Yeah.
We're all holding our breath and then we die. But another image related to that came from the film Silence of the Lambs, in which the character Hannibal Lecter is at one point in a large cage with a guard outside, and in the next scene you see him leaving, and the former guard of the cage is strung up with his entrails out like garlands across the front of this really large cage. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and absolutely horrific. So how do you combine these two things? How do you find the grounds of it? Well, this is one of a couple pieces that I did, this three, which tried to bring together that beauty and destruction in the same object. So this is, what is this, about 7 feet tall? Candy apple red, really a beautiful red color. And I had to get relicensed to do it. It's been perforated with, I don't know, 200 or 300 rounds of double-aught buckshot from 12-gauge shotgun. And then put back together, or put together. So from that went a work in honor of Bernini's portrait of King Louis XIV, with this play between the flowing grace of a satin fabric and the throne and the torn, shattered metal, which is untreated. So sometimes you just find things. Driving through Uplands area in Oak Bay, Victoria, I came across this little figure that had been shattered. And out of that came broken as if open. Because we are. You know, you break yourself open and you're torn. It's really horrible, but you're opened up. You're exposed. You're vulnerable and broken and still kind of wonderful. So there are these works that operate like that, and they kind of form a background to the thematic central point of from Wreckage come other futures. I've been dealing with these things for some time, and I decided that I also wanted to work forward in time, to make things that suggest some other future, unimagined, unknown, but still perhaps imaginable, if not yet possible. So this is not my work. This is a painting by Paul Klee called Angelus Novus, the new angel, the angel of history. And the 20th century social theorist Walter Benjamin wrote of this painting in such a way that he sees the angel as turned toward the past, looking at history, being propelled into the future to which the angel's back is turned, while the wreckage of history piles up at his feet. And that was Walter Benjamin's take on this Paul Klee painting. But there's this, and then when you think of it, we can only look at the past. We are all backing into the future, projecting our hopes for the future, always based on the past, on what we already know. Every photograph is already an historic artifact. The moment you've taken it, it's history. You can't take a picture of the future. You can't know the future. Let's go. So, from that, thinking of the potentials or the possibilities for the future, I thought it would be interesting to try to make work tables for the future, work tables for the projects for the future. And since we can't know the future, the work table would have to be a projection. Every work table, every table has an implied set of uses, whether it's your kitchen table, your dining table, this table, a desk, the workbench, and a workshop. The character of each of them suggests a certain number of uses. So I built a couple of these tables for uses not yet known. They're work tables for the solution to problems not yet conceived. And this was the first one. I shifted the character of the legs. They're just spindly little legs. And the surface is actually kind of beautiful. The color's not great on that TV, but the plexiglass panel on the right picks up the light and just spills it out along the edges. So it's quite a beautiful little surface. And this is a work table for an unimagined task. You don't know what the task is, but when it comes up, man, this thing's going to be ready for it. This is a second one. And the implications here are a little bit different. The little block with the holes in it is called a 1, 2, 3 block. It's a machinist's aid. And it's actually got a little drinking glass. You know, you get thirsty while you're at work, and a work surface. And again, you can see the legs are kind of varied. They're not traditionally organized. So there's something of the illogic of the way that it's put together. Really, the table is just an idea about a table. It's not really. It wouldn't be functional for very much at all. And that'll bring us back to more of these photogrammetry-based images. This is an earlier version. This one has since been modified a little bit, but the the beauty of this is the kind of painterly character of the left side in particular. And I have this printed, it's printed at this scale, so that the image floats in a large white field. The paper, for those of you who are inclined to wonder about such things, is Walkingford watercolor paper that's been treated for archival inkjet printing. So it really soaks up the ink and holds that image in a really rich way. I talk about all these ideas, but in fact it's the sensual experience of things that we really need. That's where the work of art can do its job. It's where it can perform its way of thinking. The didactics that I'm giving this are an artifice. The real value of the work is the way it thinks itself. And we have that intelligence as artists if we deal with it thoroughly. I often use the example of Wayne Gretzky as a hockey player. Clearly, when he talks about politics, he reveals himself to be a political idiot. When he makes wine, he demonstrates mediocrity. But as a hockey player, he was absolutely genius. That was his intelligence. Could you put that intelligence into words? Could you do it didactically? No. It lay in the body, sensory awareness, sensory coordination, consciousness all around. And there is a different kind of intelligence at play there. I think art making has a lot more to do with athletic thinking than it does with literature thinking. Poetry aside, poetry is more like visual art practices. So that said, here I go, carrying on with the didactics that accompany this work, the stock and trade of doing this kind of thing. Importantly here then, I bring together that idea of the photograph always as being always of the past, and the object as perhaps in its potential use offering us something for a future. So here's my question. Is it possible to make a work of art that is an anchor for something not yet thought? Perhaps this is the hope of some kinds of pure abstraction, and necessarily it is a hope for the future, particularly in the times that we're living through today. A future that is not yet, but that might be. So the act of making a work is a hopeful act. It's to be seen. The act of making an object for the future is looking forward. There's this duality of time then, and the question of whether it's possible to create that catalyst for a hope for the future from the residue of the past. To offer a sense of memory that people can relate to, and then get a future that's not simply a reiteration of it. And one of my criteria for looking at art in my own enjoyment of it is whether it leads us back to a reassuring past. And the past is always safe because we've survived it, those of us who have, more or less intact. And that artwork which tries to suggest an otherness, an alterity, a different possibility, a different kind of future. So, it's been quoted way too often that Leonard Cohen's "there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in" is certainly salient here. And in my work, contrary to Walter Benjamin's imagining of the angel of history, I try to turn around and face away from the past. And of course then I'm stuck. I can't recognize things. I have to work without certainty. I have to dance with uncertainty. I don't know what I'm doing as an artist. I don't even know what art is anymore. I dance with uncertainty while standing on the dance floor of the past. And at the same time, I have to recognize that our culture mostly detests and fears the unknown. And creativity itself relies on embracing what is not yet known. So we all have to dance with uncertainty, survive with doubt, live with it. Okay, for the reference, this is the source location of that work that I just, if I go back to this work, here's the source of it. So this is here's the, what did I say, the dance floor of the past in its photographic iteration. And here is things opening up to some kind of, I hope, opening up to some kind of, not a vision of the future, but a sense of it, of a future. Another example of that. The works have simple titles. This is Stockpile. I forget what I've called this one. Titles. Okay. The future is untold. And this is just down at Willows Beach in Oak Bay.
Permanently?
No, the image?
No, the
The stuff. Well, the car, there's a bit of a parked car there, it's gone.
Oh, I see what.
But then a big block of stuff has been there for as long as I've lived in Victoria. And this is called Axes for Other Possible Futures. And written, it just looks like axes. So the plural of axis doesn't work so well in type. I think I need to change that title. But, so it's a stand. I often incorporate things from the world. In this case, a couple of rocks. And it's a combination of rocks, plexiglass, and carbon fiber, and welded aluminum. So in an industrial sense, I've got big chunks of history there. You know, it doesn't just point in the three XYZ axes, though. It's kind of got its own sense of directions. And another, this was a kind of hybrid thing between being a work chair and a work table. I set out to do something with a work chair, and I was headed towards downtown Victoria. I was going to go to Value Village and the thrift shops and find some old chair, and then I thought, jeez, that's like a total student move. And legitimately, students they have no money. They're scrounging for stuff, right? And what would make the work really best? So I went to, high-end furniture store and bought a Philip Stark stool. And it was on sale. It was a floor mat. That was still a few $100.
Professors can do this.
Yeah.
And only recently. And I modified that to transform it into an other possible thing. So here, there's this sense of transformative suggestions, and it's kind of irrational, you know, but it's not. Each decision is firmly made. Rational? I don't know. Maybe it's like thought artistically. I'm just going to skip over that. So I've got this image, which was the piece that was here. And it started from a joiner's bench, small-scale joiner's bench, which I found when I was doing a residency in the UK. And I just loved the object, this leftover thing, no longer really that useful. So I hollowed it out so that it's just a skin of itself. The fundamental question I drew after doing the work is, when does the thing become merely a representation of itself? It was no longer functional as a work table. It was still looked exactly like a work table. Maybe it was kind of like a photograph. It was certainly of history. And then floating it on this complex web aluminum rods gave it another kind of ghost-like presence. In this work, How a Thing is Made, I started from that little wooden bench, which is about this big. And it had been kicking around the studio for a long time. It was pretty worn out. A couple of planks fell onto it one day, the way they're positioned there. It was fascinating. It sat like that in my studio floor for 6 months. And then I formalized it in this way, replacing the wooden planks with aluminum structure, elevating it, and so on. And that has, here's some details. That has received a new life in downtown, well, it's in Victoria, as a permanent installation on private property. The little wooden bench has been cast in bronze now by a foundry on Vancouver Island that did the most exquisite job of patinating it. You look at this and until you rap on it with your knuckles or whatever, it's an old wooden bench. Yeah, he did a beautiful job, and he did it for like half the price of the next nearest quote. An Emily Carr graduate went back to visit his mom. She wanted something cast. He had worked in the foundry at Emily Carr. He did it for her. That started a business. It's still in his mother's backyard, more or less, or on her property. And one of my third-year sculpture students this year, I took my class over to this foundry just for a tour. We got there just in time for the bronze pour, which is brilliant. Nothing like liquid metal, just running around. Anyway, he got a job. So, yeah. Art guy got a job. Big art guy. Okay. And this is getting close to the end here. A more recent piece, that wooden structure on the top, I found by the side of the road. It was like one of those free things. I walked by it. We have a little dog. I walk the dog. I walked by it every day for, 2.5 or 3 weeks, and finally thought, okay, gotta go get it. Got it. And then over a period of probably 6 to 8 months, I generated this work. I don't produce quickly, The piece that Diana described with the organ piece and my father's tool chest, that didn't reach its final iteration for about 10 years.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, there's too much art anyway. Oh, yeah. So here's this just a detail of the. Ooh, that's really bad focus. Never mind. So, just I'll conclude with a couple of current things. This image is one, it's not resolved to my satisfaction. Again, it's a photogrammetry image. This one is of a construction site. And I'm working with the half-assed notion that every site of construction is just a harbinger of its own existence as a site of ruin.
And why aren't you satisfied with that?
That doesn't feel right yet.
There's something about that looks like the United States of
America.
Sorry. That's what I thought when you first brought that up. I thought, okay, this is right.
Yeah.
You've been going I was like, oh,
I could not be satisfied with such a literal thing.
No. I think I see the Gulf of America.
I'm moving on then. And the counterpart to that is this assembly of rusted components that I've rescued. I don't know if they're going to turn into anything or not. While I was waiting for that, they sat on this little metal panel that sits outside my studio, and I just propped them up there over the winter because I didn't want to take them into the studio, didn't know what to do with them. And that leaves me with Sunday afternoon, because this little location is where every Sunday afternoon in the summer months, between noon and about 4:30 in the afternoon, I show the sculptural work of another artist. And it's by invitation. It's a zero budget exhibition. I usually buy lunch for the exhibiting artist. But I've shown people right out of grad school, and I've shown Governor General Award winner. I've shown one of Canada's representatives at the Venice Biennale, and I've shown everybody in between, all the scales of fame and glory. And tomorrow, I'll be showing the work of an Indigenous artist, Yelmer Wenstow, from Ukulele. He is part of, he lives in the house, and he's going to be showing a work tomorrow.
What's the address? What's the address?
The address is 2465 Hamiota Street. It's right by Esteban Village in Oak Bay. The following week will be Wolfgang Willetter from, he's a German artist currently residing in the UK. And the week after that, the last week of this season, will be Lavigne Gami, a really talented young artist who has just finished an MFA at Chicago University under the tutelage of Jessica Stockholder. So, and Jessica Stockholder showed earlier this summer. All right, that's enough, yeah? It's
Well,
20 minutes?
we can change the.
Oh, I know.
We can
Yeah.
continue in a different.
Thank you. Yeah.
Daniel, thanks very much. And first of all, love your shirt. Could you go back and just... Very nice.
My wife was looking for a shirt. She never finds things. I always get things when she goes shopping. Sorry. You have a real question.
Well, no, I just wanted to ask you if you could repeat that phrase you had about when you were showing the construction site. That every structure is the harbinger of its own.
Every construction is the harbinger of its own room. That might not be verbatim.
Thank you.
It was kind of unscripted. Yeah.
So how would you continue to talk about that? Like, what does that mean? Like, it eventually will become something else? Well, I'm asking.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Every time you look at a baby, you see somebody that's going to die.
It's true.
It's
true.
Yeah. It really hurt. I think more to the point would be the image that I showed in Relapse, where you've got an apartment building that collapses and reveals another one, collapses and reveals. So now, especially with the way buildings don't last. If you see a building being built, there's always the question, how long will this be here? 15 years, 20 years? The house next door to mine was just torn down. It was like in perfectly good condition, but there's now a vacant lot there that somebody can put a fourplex on, right? So down it came. And you see that in any modern city. My daughter moved to London, so I go to London frequently. It's like a city of cranes. There's towering buildings and cranes.
Go to Langford.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, but it's this constant process.
Are you describing entropy? Smithson was into entropy.
Yeah, Smithson was into entropy. I guess it's related to that, but I think when I think of it, and again, this is all didactics. When I think of it, I think it's a little bit more social than Smithson's kind of third law of thermodynamics, It pretty closely related.
Was the guy who talked about the thermodynamics? Maxwell, maybe?
Good work. I don't know.
Something to look up in Google.
Yes, yeah, do that right. Excuse me while I stare into my phone.
Well, and just going back to the baby, you know, you're talking about between the baby and death.
Yeah.
I think what you're interested in is a possibility. I mean, just to put a little bit of a more positive
Yes,
thing
yes.
on it, there's a lot of possibility for that us and that baby, right? We're the cause.
Yeah, but my impulse in looking at construction sites has to do with challenging the easy acceptance of the constantly new. If that makes sense. You know, you see a new building going up and it's like, oh yeah, everything's gonna be fine. Well, yeah, you know, let's question the character of exactly what's happening. And you know, there was the building that I did that image from is now complete and it's up for rent. You can rent a small one-bedroom apartment there for, you know, over $2,000 a month.
Richard.
Right? And I work with students that are not going to be paying over $2,000 a month for anything. So it's, you know, that I want to, I have doubt. I doubt the promise that is offered by these new buildings.
You're not alone.
No, no, it's commonplace.
I think Richard wanted to.
I've got two questions actually. One that would be a response to that. So do you doubt the possibilities that you generate about the future in your own work? Yeah, you said that you here I am alive. Huh? And so is everyone else in here. So we do overcome things. We do make it work. My original question was, you're obviously interested in the relationship between opposites, you know, past, future, construction, deconstruction, etc. I'm just interested in terms of yourself and your own biography, because the focus of your work seems to be very much on engineered objects. And I don't know anything about your past, but Diana's reference to your aeronautical past suggests an engineering past. Because the future isn't only going to be engineered, there are all sorts of other forces at play in the world as well. So I'm just intrigued by, you know, where your own biography is in relation to the focus for your own work.
I like that. I'm not interested in my own biography that much. I mean, you know, I am pretty self-centered, I suppose. Clearly, I've always been interested in making things. At a certain point when I was going into high school, I thought I might like to be an engineer. So, and the how of making things it's a personal pleasure. That my biography is that way. I started making work. There's a whole backstory, personal psychology. Let's not go there. But I started working my way back into the idea of being an artist by doing kind of drawings of spheres, perspectively worked out. So they were like geometrically really naturalistic. And then the company I was working for had an oxyacetylene welding system. I thought, that's pretty cool, playing with fire. So I went and bought one and started welding bits of coat hanger together and making like a hand. So it was the making of things that was the starting point. And in that sense, I also grew up working on farms. And in a farm background, when something breaks, you fix it. If you need something, you make it. I've got a whole series of works that are made out of anamorphic distortions of illustrations from a book of objects you could make to make farm life easier, that was published around 1900, right? So there's some of the biography, I guess.
Who knows? You're probably better at judging my biography than
No.
I am. I'm in the middle of it, I can't see.
Well, just going a little bit, diving off of what you're saying about, what's your notion of, one of the things I read about is your notion of beauty, like you like things to be beautiful. And also, but you call it awkward beauty, which I really appreciate that. So,
Well, I think it was Kant who proposed the idea that what we experience beauty as an absolute. But at the same time, we know that it is culturally determined. Yeah? And so I want to make art that is really beautiful. But I find beauty in that shattered character of that rusted steel. I find beauty in the missing information that's here. I find beauty in I find beauty in sites of ruin.
our floor, we love our floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I did in an earlier spot on the rug situation. I tore up the rug, and somebody had gone at the other hardwood floor with one of those rotary sanders and dug these big gouges in it repeatedly. So that was insurmountable, but it's kind of beautiful now that I just polished it. Lipstick on a pig, but nice pig. I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm just looking at the painting behind you, or the image behind you anew now, and thinking about like the object's relationship to the past, and more so to the future, as you've indicated for yourself. And like I'm reading the white space now as almost space that's making room for future possibility. Is that,
Yeah.
But I'm wondering a little bit, because I'm a literature person, so the white page is both promise and problem, you know, because we think of the white, like why is white space, or why is the white page the image of possibility, is a question I've often asked myself. And I'm thinking about, like white space. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
In the sense that you're, if I can project into where I think you're going, the white space is a field of possibility. It hasn't been wrecked yet.
Yeah.
It hasn't been interfered with yet. Anything could happen there. I suppose, I'm happy with you to use this white space that way. My drive in suspending this image in this amount of white space has to do with my fondness for the sculptural movement in minimalism. And the way that minimalism asks for a specific focus. Look at this. And I'm going to extrapolate that in kind of a way that might be a bit of a stretch, but it's something I believe in. If I just glance at you and I see middle-aged woman, right? Middle-aged guy. But if I get to know you, if I focus on you, then a person emerges. The generalization falls away. The categorization falls away. And as I've been a feminist ally all my life, so I can just see a woman, young woman, beautiful woman, or I can find the individual. And minimalism is completely in accord with that kind of approach. Knowing the particular, seeing the particular. And so by isolating this, having it float in that space, I'm interested in the possibility of just really seeing this.
Clara, I think you.
Well, the way you're talking now is moving towards an answer to the kind of thing I was wondering about. So thank you for your talk. I'm asking about, going back to something you said sort of right at the beginning about a general interest of yours, is where is art going? What is art, contributing perhaps
What's its
to
job?
the crazy world we have now, but just in general. Because after my years in Europe, I realized ruin is everywhere, romanticized everywhere. Abandoned objects, effaced objects, effaced sites, and so on are celebrated everywhere. And I'm not saying that then we don't need an artist, but I'm curious from your question, what does the artist offer to that? When people enter that experience, and lots of people do, it's written about and talked about all the time, people's experience of when you see these abandoned ruined sites that have been rebuilt and rebuilt over and abandoned again and ruined in the most amazing ways, and time and all that stuff in terms of what does it mean for us? We're going to be like Planet of the Apes, one of those objects in the future. So where's the artist in that? Building from what you just said there, one thing the artist can bring is a focus. The other piece is, I heard you talking about this is my engagement, this is what draws me, this is how I want to work with materials. Whether people enter that or not shouldn't really be part of that. I don't know, I'm not an artist, so I'm curious how you think about that.
There's a lot bundled into that question. I'm not interested in working as an artist with a message to deliver, a direction to offer. To do so, to me, would be telling you what to think. Kind of like an advertiser. I am interested in work that might give space for imagining alternate ways of thinking or seeing or being, that acts as a catalyst for imagination. In terms of seeing the past and its residue, when we see, as we do in Europe, things that have been shattered, rebuilt differently, often with the same stones. Le Corbusier's chapel at Longchamp is made of the ruins of another chapel. That is, I think, that allows us to be part of the bigger picture and process. I'm not sure. In terms of my engagement and my interests, well, maybe you share some of them, probably you don't share all of them. Maybe you share most of them, maybe you share a few of them, maybe you're opposed to some or all of them. No way to determine that. Can't interest that. All I can try to do is find a way to be honest with my work and with what I express through it. Am I getting anywhere close to addressing your question?
Can I add something? I think
Yeah, help me out here.
what your work does, I mean, I think about this a lot, tomorrow we're organizing a rally about Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always something that we can do. So the stupid things I do when I'm making art, how can I reconcile that with what I know going on in the world? And I think particularly the value of what you do, it's indirect a little bit, but breaking up fixity. Like that.
Absolutely.
There is so, like if all of us stop being so, we want this future, or this is what's good, this is where we're going. Just even staying in that area of uncertainty, you call it, but not fixed. I mean, we all have such fixed opinions, and I just think that is very unhelpful to.
And if I pay attention to you as the individual, not you in the generalized sense, and obviously, look, we have to generalize.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to see each of you as particulars, certain things would be harder to navigate. Which side of the road to drive on in a different context. But if I start to see you as a particular, then that way of looking will infect the way an Israeli soldier responds to a hungry Palestinian child, for example.
Because that's why people dehumanize people.
Exactly.
Then you can kill.
So I want to see you.
I want to see this. It's training in consciousness. It's training in seeing, and it's a uniting of seeing and consciousness. And I think art that tells you a way to see is sometimes, sometimes I'm totally on side with the message. Yes, I agree with the politics of this completely. You're still just telling me what to think. And I'll either agree or disagree. But if you show me something that blows my mind, that opens a door in my mind that I can never quite get closed again, then you have achieved an amazing and wonderful thing. And I think when we look back on our lives, we may find one or two people or situations, maybe a teacher, a parent, a friend, who has challenged us, and it's changed everything from there on. Personal example. It was my second. I quit university like 3 or 4 times. And in one of the iterations, I was in a seminar taught by the artist Maury Baden. And I thought it'd be cool if I did this piece. I had a big chunk of Hauser, the heavy-duty rope that I'd found, and I stuck one end, fastened one end to the wall, and then had it stretched across the room, and used fishing line to tie it to the other side of the room so it went across. And my idea was, I hate that I did this, but I, we've all done work that we just look back on. Damn, Jesus. It was supposed to be the illusion of this rope just magically there, right? So the problem being, of course, that you have to pretend that the fishing line that's holding it up doesn't exist, while pretending that the rope does exist. So you can't reconcile those two experiences anyway. Maury took one look at it and just totally shit on it. And that stuck with me. For years, obviously, here I am talking about it now, and has influenced my art production ever since. Just that one moment, it cracked something open that stayed open. Sometimes artwork can do that, and you never know.
But that was didacticism, his comment to you.
Sorry?
That was didacticism, his comment to you, not the artwork itself.
No, what he did though was he talked about his experience. Right? He didn't say, Daniel, don't do this. He said, when I look at this, I just see that fishing line that's there, and I see the play between this, I'm paraphrasing, but I see what's happening here, and there's no trick.
Was that before or
So-
after you quit? For 1 year?
I finished that year, yeah. But that led to my ideation career.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I quit the year before at McMaster University, and then I quit UBC after the first year. I just wasn't right for school. And then I went back 7 years later and finished 1 degree, and then I started architecture school, and I quit that after a year. And then I spent a couple of years, and then I did a master's degree and finished, I think.
I just want to ask just one question or area to look into is your respect for lineage, like the history of a piece, and then trying to offer different possibilities. I love that table series because it just gives it just gets us all to question. Oh, we see a table. It can be a work table, whatever, drafting table. So the possibilities, and I see the photogrammetry, is that how you say that? It has a lineage like with cubism, with, I don't know if people know David Hockney's Polaroid system. He just took a bunch of Polaroids and then put them together in a very fragmented way, but you see this road in the desert. So, and I mean all artists, whether it's writers or whoever, try and get us to see, like break out reality. Again, fix it, like this is reality. No, it's fragmented, it's all kinds of things. So I love what you're doing with that whole process, breaking things up.
And you talked about art, what's the purpose of art in some of these scenarios, but I think it's really teaching people to question. Because the white page, you know, when you're looking at this, you can't look at it without trying to imagine what was there or what's going on. So it is really teaching people to question what they see. And if we ever needed that more, I think it would be now.
Well, and you wouldn't see that so much with less white space.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
White space has a role,
Mhm.
like dark has a role for light.
It's really hard to document this. You know, when you're looking for exhibitions or other opportunities, I put this onto a computer screen. If I have the whole thing, the image is lost. And if I do an excerpt from it, the sensibility of it is lost. And it really demands this scale or something close to this scale. And that amount of presence. There are ways to document it that help to get at that, and that's an ongoing challenge of sculpture. Documentation doesn't do the work.
That's why I love the, you know, like you material, the objects, so the real thing.
Yeah, I think especially in an age of the increasing presence of AI imagery, objects have a very important part to play artistically in, again, that kind of presence or consciousness that they necessitate. Think about it though, before photography, all pictures were understood as being fabrication. All pictures, some of them very accurate depictions of things that were out there. With photography, even though it was never entirely true, there was at least the sense that that represents exactly what was there. With AI, that is no longer the case. Every image has to be understood as fabrication.
So Daniel, I'm interested in how much time have you spent using newer technologies in your work? Because a student introduced you to photogrammetry. You're talking about how we can look backward but not forward, but we keep getting these new technologies, and how is that affecting our ability to look back? Photogrammetry, I know from archaeology and anthropology work, where they're finding in South America, through this new technology, they're finding that these civilizations were far bigger and more developed than we thought, because they can look through the jungle down through and actually see what was there layers before.
Yeah, I use technology to compensate for my own insecurity and feelings of inadequacy. That, you know, maybe the technology will get past my own inabilities.
But in your idea of decay and erosion, how much are you, and then looking to the future, how much are you kind of experiencing these new technologies, or are you embedding them into what you're doing, or is that something that students bring to you? Or
I'm working now on, my great-grandfather was an early adopter of technology. Born in 1867, died in 1967. He had cameras, he had stuff, he had his workshop. He was a beekeeper, but he was also like really into it. I think I've inherited some of his drive towards that. I've always been interested in technology. The caveat is that there's a temptation to let the technology do the work that the art has to do. And then it becomes this kind of spectacle. Just a show. You end up showing off the technology. And I see that frequently. I'm really try not to let the technology do the show. I'm messing around now with trying to make a 3D print of a very distorted photogrammetry image of a motorcycle that I crashed. And life-sized, and it's going to have to be pieced together. And I wasn't sure quite how to get at parts of it until I saw last a year ago, in Paris, an European African artist who did a figure using 3D printing, and it was patched together.
in this really interesting way. That was good. It plays with the technology, but it lets all the seams show. Now, who was the playwright? Bertolt Brecht, in his the sort of what, the Brechtian alienation technique. Do you know what that was? We've all seen it now. Some are saying yes. For those who don't, the simple explanation is that the breaking of the fourth wall. So you'll see an actor engaged profoundly with in the fiction, and then they go, see what she just did? The director told her to do that. And then back in. And for Brecht, that was a notion of reminding people that they were looking at a fiction and a way of elevating critical consciousness in the act of enjoying the fiction. That's a marker, and that's a way to use technology.
Yeah, puncturing reality, or what we think.
Yeah, let the fictive be known as fictive, and recognize that that does not diminish its value.